You may not think you have enough space to grow a beautiful garden, but there's some ways that you can actually achieve this that are maybe a little surprising to you. For instance, here, this is a garden where we have 4 raised beds, and in them you cannot believe the amount of produce you can produce in a single growing season. Of course, if you don't have space to plant directly in the ground, containers are an obvious choice. What I like to do is use larger containers, not smaller containers, and I like to use them in groupings. You can get some real visual impact. Containers are also very handy for tucking into tight spaces, and of course you can move them around, so you have some flexibility. Now let's move on to growing things on the vertical. Growing vines on posts, like I've done here with these hops vines on a single post, can make an interesting vertical element. Also, using cattle panels to grow vines on can add visual interest to a garden. And if you're really feeling ambitious and love to prune, you might grow some trees in the espalier form. This one is called cordon, where apples grow on it, and the candelabra form is classic, and here you can see pears growing. Lastly, think of dwarf-type shrubs. They're more compact and work great in small spaces. For instance, take this hydrangea. This one's called Little Lime. It's the smaller version of limelight hydrangea, which is so popular and does so well in sunny areas. You see, plant breeders have been busy to make sure that these plants are perfect for areas with limited space. I hope some of these ideas help you create the perfect garden. Who doesn't love bold and beautiful flowers in their garden, particularly when you can grow them in a container? I've just planted some Chinese coral cannas in this container, and in no time they'll emerge out of the ground and be absolutely beautiful, blooming late spring, summer, and into the fall. Canna tubers look like this, and when you plant them, what you want to do is you want to make sure that that little bud is pointing upward. You see that? All right. And then all you have to do is plant them in a rich potting soil with about 2 inches of soil on top of them. And then in about 2 weeks, fertilize them. I've got a little bit of fertilizer here. I like to use an organic fertilizer and sprinkle it around them. And throughout the course of their growing, you need to make sure the soil stays consistently moist. In fact, cannas can actually grow in standing water, so you can't overwater this particular flower. The bold flowers and foliage are an absolute knockout, and they're a must for every garden. Now what I'll do is once these are all planted, I'll just cover the top layer with some mulch, and in just a week or so, once the soil warms, they'll emerge, and in several weeks we'll have gorgeous foliage, and then the blooms will come on. For more information on growing cannas, check out my website, pallansmith.com. One of the things I look forward to with getting the garden planted is that I can begin to share this garden with other things, namely butterflies. This particular plant that I have here is one that attracts butterflies. It's a buddleia or butterfly bush. Now what I love about this plant is that this one is actually a low growing one. In fact, its name is lo and behold purple haze. You can see the gorgeous long blooms on it. Butterflies love it. You see this dwarf form of butterfly bush I like very much because it's horizontal and it spreads out so it'll fill this whole area. And the other thing about butterfly bushes is that they are perennial. These are shrubs that will stay in your garden for years to come. And they're constantly throwing off these really long, beautiful blooms. You can see once the bloom fades, it looks like this, but as new ones come on, they look like this. All very beautiful forms. I chose to plant these butterfly bushes here on this corner in a mass grouping, so they'll create a lot of strong visual effect. You want to plant butterfly bushes in full sun. These will grow to about 36 inches tall and then they stop. That's why I like this dwarf form, because you don't have to cut them back constantly. Lo and behold, purple haze buddleia is not invasive. It doesn't set seed and come up everywhere in the garden. The other thing that's good about it is that it's deer resistant. So if you have problems with deer, you might think about some of these buddleias. Who doesn't love beautiful hydrangeas? Now, I certainly do, and I grow them every way I possibly can, and I love growing them in containers. You'll see them throughout Moss Mountain Farm in containers blooming throughout the summer. Now, if you can't decide whether you want pink or blue hydrangeas, try some of ours. All you have to do is change the soil. If you want bluer hydrangeas, which is the direction this one is definitely going, all you have to do is add a soil acidifier or an acidifying fertilizer. If you prefer pink, well, you want to sweeten the soil by using a little lime, of which you can pick up at your local hardware store. Now, another thing to keep in mind about these hydrangeas is that they rebloom. I've gotten up to 80 blooms off of a plant over a growing season. Now, I'm going to pot this one up in this container, and I want it to go more toward the blue, so I'm going to actually use this acidifier in the soil like this as I plant it. And over time, those blooms will begin to turn bluer and bluer. As you can see, there's no reason why every garden should have some of these reblooming hydrangeas in them. Hope you'll give them a try. For more information, check out my website, pallentsmith.com. Boy, aren't you beautiful? It's always exciting to me when the dahlias begin to bloom in my garden. This particular type of dahlia is one that, well, is considered a dwarf because it's under 30 inches or so high. And I love its dark, almost red foliage. And just look at these bright red to magenta flowers. You can see as the buds begin to open, they're really dark red like this. And then as they fade, they become lighter until they totally fade away like this. And this is when you want to come in and just deadhead them off like that. You see, by taking the spent blooms away, the plant is programmed to produce more and more buds. This little guy will bloom throughout the entire summer into the fall. It'll really show out in the fall when temperatures cool off, right up until the first hard freeze. If you really start to get into dahlias, you'll find that, well, they come in all kinds of flower shapes and colors. I mean, they're really kaleidoscopic when it comes to color. And what's fun about these dwarf varieties is that they're excellent for growing in containers. Now, if you want to grow dahlias, whether it's in a container or in the garden, they love full, hot sun. You want to make sure they're planted in a well-drained soil and that they get consistent moisture. They can go through some periods of dryness because they have a tuber. They grow from a big root, and actually the root is edible. From the Garden Home, I'm Alan Smith. There's so many edibles you can grow in containers. In fact, many plants actually prefer it. But there are a few things you want to know in choosing the best container for whatever you plan to grow. For instance, bigger is always better. You see, it's important that the roots have plenty of room to grow, but maybe even more importantly, to require less frequent watering. I know that's a major issue for many gardeners these days. Remember, when choosing the size of a container, most vegetables are going to need at least a 5-gallon vessel, while herbs, lettuce, and similar shallow-rooted plants can be grown in smaller containers. Now, while this idea of bigger is better is good for the plants, you need to think about the weight of the containers themselves, particularly if you're on a rooftop or a balcony. And if you ever plan on moving the planter or bringing it inside for winter, it's best to use a material like a food-grade plastic. It'll be easier on your back when you move them around, and it might just save you a trip to the chiropractor. I know what you're thinking. Plastic? Won't those fade or deteriorate in the sunlight? Well, these won't. I like to use Crescent Garden rotationally molded planters that are guaranteed up to 10 years. These will resist cracking, and with a double wall design, they make great insulators for your plants in the heat and cold. These planters will also hold water longer than most porous materials, again, saving you time and money. Probably the best bit of advice I can give you is to make sure that your container has adequate drainage. You see, some plants, like this beautiful lavender, really like good drainage. They don't like wet feet, so keep that in mind. So for you gardeners who have really bad soil or no soil at all or very little room, growing edibles in containers may be just the ticket. And think about it this way, you can keep them really close to your kitchen door. How handy is that? I hope you'll give them a try. Hey there, who doesn't love the idea of being able to walk outside onto your deck and pick some beautiful fresh produce? Well, you can with this Little Birdie series of tomatoes. I just love them. It's a cascading cherry type tomato. This flock of little birds is made up of red robin, yellow canary, and rosy finch. So with the Little Birdie series, it doesn't matter whether you have a garden or not. You can grow them in containers or in a hanging basket like this. Let me show you how. Just look at all of these salad greens. Can you believe it? Before I jump in here and start harvesting, I want to show you how I created this. I love to upcycle. I love to take something that you would normally throw away and get creative with it. So I save everything, like old wheelbarrows. And I have a friend who's a masonry contractor, and I called and I said, look, you got any old wheelbarrows where the wheels have come off, or maybe the handles don't work anymore, or they have holes in the bottom? Well, I got 3 of them, and this is what I did. I created 3 little gardens by lining up these wheelbarrows and filling them with a good rich soil and making sure that the bottom of the wheelbarrow had some holes in it because you need good drainage. I planted these with spring salad greens. I've got 3 types of lettuce growing in here: Butter Crunch, Red Sail, and this beautiful deep burgundy colored red oak leaf lettuce. I also have kale, arugula, as well as a few herbs like flat-leaf Italian parsley. Oh, and I can't forget about this gorgeous spinach. Now, once this is finished, the spring crop, I can come back in and I can plant tomatoes and peppers. You don't have a lot of room? Give this a try. Just consider it food for thought. For the Garden Home, I'm Alan Smith. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and be sure to ring the bell for notifications.